accepted pieces of this calling, you know, have been really clear for me, where I'm like, oh, this isn't just something I said yes to, it's something I'm getting training on.
Right.
Like, this is something that I'm supposed to be here to do, you know? It's very clear for me that this is beyond just like saying yes to like a career path. Like, no, this is
Right.
I'm supposed to be doing this work in this body in this lifetime, you know?
And have you always listened to your intuition?
Oh no. When I was a kid, yes. And when I was a kid, I feel like I was the most connected to my intuition. And then like somehow, like 11 or 12, like a lot of things happened, a lot of changes, where I was just like, I just shut that shit down. I was like, nope.
Right.
Nope. I stopped like being okay with the voices I was hearing, with the things I was seeing. No, I don't want to see you. No, I don't want to hear you. No, like, you know, like
yeah.
created a lot of like excess noise in my brain, so that those things that told me do this, do that, like don't do that, or like, you know, like for that guidance that I was receiving from, I just didn't want it, you know, I didn't want it at that time. And so, you know, and even in my early mid-20s, I started realizing like, oh shit, this isn't something I can just shut off.
I know exactly what you mean.
You can just shut off, like this is you, and the more you run away from it, the louder it's gonna get. So, and the more things are gonna happen that are gonna push you to this path. So, the sooner you do it, the quicker we can get this shit going. You know.
If not, it will definitely drag
and
you.
I know that happened with midwifery. You know, like like I knew that this was gonna be my path like a couple of years ago when I started birth work. No, like I knew it, and I still was like, oh, I'm gonna be a doula and kind of like test it out and see if this is really something that's for me, you know, versus like, no, like I already knew I was gonna end up in this place a long time ago. But I had my process, and they were very patient with it, and now they're like, no, it's time now, so you gotta go do this. And I'm like, okay, yes, you know.
Yeah. And what does that feel like to be a doula, to be into midwifery?
It's a big responsibility, you know, definitely a big responsibility. I think that it feels like, now it doesn't feel like anything other than, okay, like it is what it is, you know? I just actually, in the last conversation I was having with folks, we were talking about this, like the romanticization of this work and this way of being in the world, you know, and that some of us don't have that choice, and for some of us it's not fun. It's fucking hard, you know. Right. It's hard. It's painful. Yeah. It has an effect on our body. It's not always like sustainable to some capacity. It has a lot of implications. You become really isolated because of the work. There's very specific things you have to do to make sure that you are responsible with that work and with this calling. You know, there's things you have to tend to. There's times you have to be up and doing things, and there's so much responsibility that comes with it that it's not a simple thing to just say yes to or just do, you know? It's way more complex. So sometimes it feels like overwhelming. Sometimes it feels like, shit, I don't want to do this. Fuck that. Like, nope, I don't want to do that after that experience. Like, nope, that wasn't fun. And there's other times like today where I'm just really grateful that there has been so much patience with my practice, especially from like my spirit guides and the things that protect and like guide what I do, that they've been like really patient with me and really honored like my need to take things slow or to take different routes before getting here, you know? So today I feel really grateful for that, and I'm really thankful for the guidance that I get, and how I get it and how gentle it is sometimes, because sometimes it's not very gentle, you know?
Wow. And so how long have you been on this conscious ride exactly? Because you say mid-20s, it's kind of when you reconnected.
Yeah, definitely early 20s is when I reconnected, for sure. It's been over almost 14, 15 years now, you know, that I've been really committed to that curiosity with like spirituality, with spirit, with planned with things, you know. It's all happened in like stages and waves for sure. And they've all come in different forms, but that curiosity within me has been very present now, consistently now for way over a decade, you know?
That's beautiful. It's like I'm like kind of there. I'm like a little bit behind, but I can really resonate with that feeling. So how do you feel that 2019 felt for you?
Oh, wow. 2019, oof. It was like I was getting taken down deep in the ocean, you know? Way deep in there, going like, oh, here you go. This is it. It's now or never. Like, you really need to work through this, you know? I started I wonder if my sister's gonna hear this. Hopefully not. I always feel weird when I talk about really personal family things, because then my sister's like, don't do that shit on social media, like blah, blah, blah. Like, it's real, you know, like they don't want people knowing that shit. But I think it's relevant to your question, so I'm gonna share what feels safe to share, you know. But you know, I've had a
and this is a safe
once
space.
it goes out into the world, we'll see. But
that's up to them,
you know, like,
no.
And I also wouldn't be an honest person if I wasn't to answer that question very genuinely, you know. But what happened is, you know, like for me, like I've had a really complicated relationship with my mom for a long time now, you know. It's been a very beautiful relationship. It was a very beautiful relationship growing up for the most part, you know? But there's been elements of that relationship that were not very good, and as an adult I've had to come to terms with that and accept that and recognize, like, oh, I never processed that, like I never talked about that, I never dealt with that. I've been running away from or like, you know, really moving away from talking about those things because they're so fucking painful, you know, if I'm gonna be honest. And so what happened is the day before the New Year's is, you know, me and my mom got in a really huge argument over something that was really pretty insignificant, but that kind of blew up in a way that was really intense for both of us. And you know, my mom went into an old pattern of hers where she, you know, was almost physically violent towards me, and I was standing there kind of going like, oh fuck, like here I am in my mid-30s, and here's mom like about to almost hit me again, and she hasn't done that since I was a kid, you know. And I'm just like, she took me, like I got re-triggered intensely, you know. And I went back to so many memories of being 7, being 8, being 9, where she used to do that to me, you know, because she was a single parent with 3 jobs and had a lot of shit that she had to, a lot of her own trauma that, you know, unfortunately, you know, projected into me. And so I went to that place, and, you know, like I left that experience going like, I really need to not be in relationship with my parent at this time. I can't anymore. I can't, you know, like, and I had a big breakdown, and this was the day before the new year, you know, or a Gregorian year at least, but you know, like I had a huge moment, and I started my year off like that. For 3 months, I was in like a really deep emotional state, kind of like processing all this physical abuse I never processed before, and it all got triggered by experience, and it was because it was time, you know. And I didn't want to, you know, I hadn't wanted to for a long time. I hadn't wanted to talk about it. I hadn't wanted to deal with it. And this element of my relationship with her, and it was very apparent to me that it was the time to do that now. And so this year, 2019, has been very much about me, like, being in space with that trauma, specifically related to being physically abused as a kid, you know. Didn't happen often, but the times that happen are very resonant with me, and those are the things that can for me in that experience. And again, it's like not to villainize my parent at all. It's to contextualize it historically, contextualize it, you know, to her experience, and know that, like, I understand why it happened. It doesn't mean that it was okay. It doesn't mean it wasn't her fault. It hasn't had an impact on me, and those are all the things I've been able to kind of finally process this year. And kind of verbalize to myself, verbalize in like therapy and all these other healing modalities that have been really supporting me to process that, you know. And then that just kind of started like a whole like like a ripple effect of everything else. And so that's where I'm at. Yeah, like exactly just coming out of 2019, being really grateful for the way in which the things have been, as difficult as they have been, and kind of now looking back, going like, fuck, like I processed so much stuff this year, and I am so grateful for it, and that shit was not fun at all. I don't want to go through that again like that. Like, I'm good, you know, but knowing that, man, there's, you know, like processing, you know, stuff, generational trauma is well, for me, more than a struggle, it comes in waves, you know, and sometimes it feels like a struggle, and sometimes it feels like cool, like fuck yeah, we did this, like it feels good, and then most of the time it doesn't feel like that, you know. But for me, it's like it always comes in waves, and right when you think you like really process something, there comes another wave, and you're like, oh, well, I guess here we go.
Yeah, take a U-turn and be like, okay.
So that's kind of where I started my year, you know, just very much in that element, and very, very much in a lot of emotional like pain and an emotional just funk. But moving through the year, thinking everything that's kind of come into my path that supported me, I'm really grateful for, and I'm happy I'm here at this moment, you know.
Has that also allowed you to move into midwifery?
You know what? I feel like
better.
I haven't really thought about the connection between them necessarily, but yeah, like between me and the decision this year, but I definitely get called to birth work, absolutely, you know, because of my relationship with my mom, and also like my relationship to my ancestors, my maternal lineage, for sure, on my mom's side. And like and part of what happened when I went into birth work initially was my grandmother died in 2014, January 8th. She passed on to the spirit realm, and a couple of months after she passed on to the spirit realm, she came and I had a dream with her, and in that dream, she was telling me that I had to learn about birth work. Then, she didn't say birth work, she didn't use that word. Que tenía que aprender sobre el parto in my dream. And at that time, is she telling me like I'm gonna be a parent? Because, you know, for a long time, because of my trauma, I'm never gonna raise kids. Like, I don't want to fuck up like my mom did. That was my language, you know, like during my like early 20s. Like, I don't want to fuck that. Like, I don't want to have that experience, that journey. I don't want to be a parent. That's not for me. And it hadn't been till like recently, like around that time when my grandmother passed away, where I was kind of curious about maybe I do want to be a parent and support someone's growth and development in this world, in that role. Maybe I won't birth that baby, but, you know, I was kind of open to the idea of good as like a thing that I might want to do, or support someone, a little like another little being through that, you know. And so that kind of is what's happening at the time with that work, you know. But what that work has brought me into so much healing, for sure, around like my own relationship to my mom and what happened to me at my birth. You know, like I was a C-section baby in Mexico. They slit my mom's stomach from the top, like right under her chest, like by her, like below her diaphragm, all the way. Like, this happened to her. She was hella young. She was 20 years old when she had me, and they didn't do that C-section like they do it now, where they cut across under the belly, you know, like they slit her like horizontally down, and she had a thick ass scar. She always told me about, you know, that it was because of my birth, and then they recut that open for my other sister's birth. So she had a really painful life, and that's like an element of my mother's life that I, you know, like I really honor, and I really thank her for bringing me into this world, because it was painful as fuck for her too, you know. So I very much resonate with my own birth story in terms of why birth work for me is so important and so necessary right now for me to be a part of. But definitely, like, yeah, there's a lot of healing that's happening for me in that work as well, you know. And it's been really beautiful, and it kind of all it all happened this year. I don't know necessarily if it happened because of that, but I definitely know that they're connected to some capacity, you know.
Yeah, there's a connection for sure. I feel like 2019 was like a inner child healing year.
For you?
Yeah, for me, definitely. Just like a lot of triggers and a lot of stuff that I had to realize was not processed. And I was like, oh shit. like I have work to do. And it was to a point where I'm like